Hey everybody, today we're going to talk about how World War I got started. So yesterday we talked about the long-term causes, militarism, imperialism, alliances, that type of stuff. Today we're going to talk about the little spark that's going to set the whole thing off. It gets really dumb really quick, which makes it for very fun to learn about, but a really dumb war. Alright, so as we had talked about, Europe at the time was considered a powder keg. Meaning that it is it can just sit there forever as long as you want and nothing bad is going to happen. However, one little spark and it could just ignite the whole thing and be absolutely catastrophic, which is exactly what's going to happen. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So I want to show you this little map here because we're going to reference it quite a bit. Now I can draw all over it here. Like, I say that. Hold on. Boop. I can draw all over it, so I'm going to be drawing all over it as we go through this. Let me back out of that. All right, so if you notice, this is what Europe looks like in pre-World War I, and we will be discussing that more as we go through. All right, so boop. Don't want to do that. And boop, boop. All right, so the spark. So I'll give you kind of the shortened version here, and I'll go into detail on the story. The spark is there's an assassination of a dude named Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Archduke Franz Ferdinand gets assassinated, and it starts this entire war. So you're like, man, Archduke Franz Ferdinand must have been this like really important guy. I mean, he was important to Austria. He was their heir to their throne. Like if king and queen die in Austria, he'd be the next guy to take over. So he wasn't not important, but it wasn't anything that should have caused what it caused, and we're going to talk about that today. It really starts with this dude, Archduke Franz Ferdinand. So Archduke Franz Ferdinand lives in a fantasy world here where he thinks that the world loves him. So he's grown up rich in an isolated community, and his worldview of things is really distorted from the way it really is. So the question here is, and we're going to talk about this in detail, Europe is referred to as a powder keg at this time, and the assassination is considered the spark. Why does this assassination quickly pull most of the world into war? So we're going to go into great detail on how it pulls everybody into the war. What I really want you to write here is basically how one little thing could cause all this to happen. So remember, everybody has secret alliances. When this assassination happens, it makes countries mad at each other. When they start fighting, it's going to pull all these other countries into the war as well. All right? So that is how it pulls it into the situation pretty quickly. So the main thing I need here is just the understanding that what happens is that when two small countries start going to war, because they're all connected to other countries, it's going to bring them in. And I'm getting ready to talk to you about the details of how that's getting ready to happen here. All right, so let me show you a map. This is the same map that I had just showed you. So what I'm getting ready to do is I'm getting ready to zoom in on, this area here. All right, so I'm getting ready to go to the next slide, and it's just going to be zooming in on that part right there. All right, so here we be. I can stick myself up over here, get out of your way. All right, so these are countries that you're probably not super familiar with. We're going to be talking about Austria-Hungary right here, where the red dot is. So Austria-Hungary, that's where Archduke Franz Ferdinand, that guy whose picture I just showed you, he is the heir to the throne in Austria-Hungary. Now, Austria is a modern country. They have a modern military like the other powerful countries that are dealing with militarism and stuff like that. However, they're like, of the modern countries, they're the least modern. So they're kind of new to this imperialism game, which is where you just take over other countries. Typically, when you take over other countries, what you want to do is you want to take over countries really far away so that if it goes bad, you can just like cut and run and they can't do anything about it. All right. Every country that tries imperialism for the first time messes it up. Austria is no example. They break a huge rule with imperialism the first time they decide to take over a country. What Austria does is Austria takes over this country called Bosnia just below them. All right. So Bosnia gets taken over by Austria. And Bosnia is not a big fan of this, not surprising at all. All right. So Austria now owns Bosnia. So here's kind of the border of Austria at the time. All right. So that's the border of Austria. So the people in Bosnia, so they've owned Bosnia for about 15 years now, and the people in Bosnia really do not like being owned by anybody. Not only is Bosnia grumpy about it, Bosnia has, I'll do it in blue, I guess. All right, Bosnia over here has a BFF in Serbia. All right, Serbia is next door to them and is also really unhappy that Bosnia got taken over. Not only is Bosnia friends with Serbia, Serbia is also afraid, what if this happens to us too? So Serbia not happy that Bosnia has been taken over. So Archduke Franz Ferdinand, he's where this red dot is here in Austria, all right, in their capital. He hears that the people in Bosnia are not happy being taken over because of nationalism here. He thinks his country is the greatest ever and can't imagine why Bosnia would be unhappy having been taken over by the gloriousness that is his country. So he thinks what those people need, the reason they're grumpy down in Austria, is because they haven't got a chance to meet him yet, his glorious self, because he will eventually one day be their leader when his mom and dad dies. So what he wants to do is go down to Bosnia, to a city, and I'll put a little dot here, all right, about right here in Bosnia, if you see that on your map, that red dot. That's the capital of Bosnia, and it's called Sarajevo. So he expects to go down to Sarajevo, have a parade in Sarajevo in his honor, and by doing so, everybody's going to see him. They're all going to throw flowers at him. They're going to be like, oh, we love you so much, Archduke Franz Ferdinand. And then they're going to love him from then on. There's no more problems. Like, this is not smart to go into like a hostile environment as the heir to the throne of the country they're angry at and have a parade in your honor. So he tells all the army, hey, I'm going to go have a parade down here. The army in Austria is like, yeah, not a good idea. If you go down to Austria, bad things are going to happen. He's like, no, they just love me so much. They miss me. So they, since he's in charge of them, they have to do it. He sends the army down and he's going to have this parade. The army goes down the day before into Sarajevo and they basically inform everybody in the city, here's what's going to happen. You're going to line up down the street for this parade. You're all going to be given flowers. When he comes by in his car, because we have cars now, it's going to be 1914 when this happens. He's going to come puttering by in the back of a car. He's going to have a driver. Him and his wife are going to be in the back of the car. And he's going to be like, my people. When he comes by you, you throw your flowers at him. That's what the army is telling the people of Sarajevo. That, and if you don't, we're going to shoot you. Because all the army stands behind all the people at the parade to make sure that they do this. So they're like, okay, so on the day of this parade, this is exactly what happens. All the people line up in Sarajevo down the one main street. They're all given flowers. All the army stands behind them with guns pointed at them like, you will be happy about this. As Archduke Franz Ferdinand comes through in the car, he's in the back seat of the car, he's standing up, he's like, my people, as he's inching very slowly down the street, as all the people are like terrifyingly throwing flowers so they don't get shot by the guy that's standing behind them. So this is what's happening. Now, he had announced that this parade was going to take place. There is, I guess I'll use yellow now, in Serbia, if you see that on your map, Serbia there, all right, there's a group of people in Serbia that is a terrorist organization. They're not associated with the government or anything, but it's a small terrorist organization called the Black Hand. They hate Austria because they're afraid they might get taken over, and they also don't like the fact that Bosnia has been taken over. So they see that there's all these leaders down in Bosnia, and this is going to be their time to attack. So a whole bunch of guys, it's actually about a handful. It's probably why they're called the Black Hand. The Black Hand comes across the border here, all right, into Sarajevo. All right. These handful of guys are all designed to kill a certain person here, like Archduke Franz Ferdinand and these other people. They're all given like assignments. All right. So most of the people, as soon as they cross the border, they freak out and they panic. Like, I'm not actually killing anybody, and they run back home. There's really only two guys that make it to Sarajevo. The dude that's supposed to kill Archduke Franz Ferdinand, all right, who's going to do it during the parade, and the guy that's supposed to kill a lower level official, a guy named Gavrilo Princip. That's the name of the assassin. So Gavrilo Princip, the only person who shows up is the guy that's supposed to kill Archduke Franz Ferdinand. So Gavrilo Princip gets lost in Sarajevo. All these empty streets. He's not at the parade. He can't ask anybody for directions because they're all at the parade. So he's like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? So he's wandering around, can't figure out what's happening, what's taking place. So what? He would just go home, but there's nobody to ask because everything's deserted. So he's just trying to find his way out, and he's like lost in Sarajevo. He's never been here before. So the guy that's going to kill Archduke Franz Ferdinand has showed up in the parade, waiting for Archduke Franz Ferdinand to come by in front of him. Now, when you show up to assassinate somebody, typically you take like a sword, bow and arrow, blow dart, side of the neck, you down. You would think you would take one of these weapons. You take guns. They have plenty of guns now. No, he has a brand new invention called the hand grenade. All right. So he is standing here in the middle of this parade, holding his hand grenade out, all right, like this, with his hand on the pin. You pull the pin and you throw it, because hand grenades are out now, like this, just in the middle of the crowd, like this. Now, if you saw this today in a crowd, you would absolutely freak out and run away. However, at the time, nobody had ever seen a hand grenade. Like, oh, that guy's got a cool rock keychain. Like, nobody realizes what it is. As Archduke Franz Ferdinand comes by in front of him, he tries to assassinate him. He pulls the pin and throws the grenade at him. Now, the Black Hand is not a wealthy group. They could afford exactly one hand grenade. So they haven't had a chance to practice. All he knows is pull the pin and throw. So he pulls the pin and throws it as hard as he can. It drills the side of the car and comes rolling right back towards him. He doesn't realize there's like a 5-second delay on it. So he's like, ah, shucks, man. He's like kicking it around on the ground. He's like, this thing doesn't. All right. Wipes him out and everybody around him, big red mist. Archduke Franz Ferdinand's like, oh my gosh, what just happened? Did somebody try to throw a bomb at me? So the driver of the car knows this was an assassination attempt, tells Archduke Franz Ferdinand to sit down in the back, and he takes off flying through the crowd, down a side street to Sarajevo, trying to find his way out of the street, and turns around, rounds the turn real fast, and skids and stalls out. Now, while all this is taking place, Gavrilo Princip, the guy that's lost, is just trying to find his way home. Like, he's trying to find his way out of Sarajevo. So as he's walking around aimlessly around these empty streets, all of a sudden this car comes roaring down a side alley and comes right near him and skids really hard next to him and stalls out. That's the car with Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife. Gavrilo Princip had brought a pistol. He comes over here, pulls the pistol out, and shoots Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife at point-blank range, killing both of them. Immediately, the military shows up and grabs Gavrilo Princip for the assassination of this whole thing. All right. Not what I want to do right there. And this is a picture, all right, of Gavrilo Princip being arrested. It's a real photograph. This is a picture of Gavrilo Princip. He is taken into this building. He confesses to everything that happened, and he is executed inside that building. All right. So Gavrilo Princip is caught immediately, and he is executed for this. All right. So it's a typical day in. So Gavrilo Princip is taken in here, and he is executed. This is just an assassination. This is Europe. This happens all the time, all right? This is going to get out of hand crazy fast, all right? So the next question here is, why did the Black Hand decide to kill Archduke Franz Ferdinand? So nationalism doesn't necessarily follow logic. Serbia believes if they kill Archduke Franz Ferdinand, he will leave Bosnia alone. That is why they kill him. They think by killing him, Bosnia will be left alone and Austria will retreat back to Austria. That's not typically how human nature happens. You attack somebody, they fight back. But the question here is, why did they do it? The question is, they believed that if they killed Archduke Franz Ferdinand, that Austria would leave Bosnia alone, and that Austria would also leave Serbia alone, and that everything would go back to normal. That's not what happens, but that was their belief, and so that's the answer to the question. All right. Here's where it gets dumb. Are you ready for some dumbness? All righty. So, let's see if I'm going to use some. I guess I'll use red and I'll use yellow. Those are two colors I'm going to use. All right. So to start with, we got Austria here. Oh, well, how about make it red? You got Austria here, all right? Austria is super angry, all right? So Austria, who do you think they're angry at, all right? Austria is not angry at the Black Hand. They're all dead now anyway. Who they're angry at is Serbia, because that's where the Black Hand was from. So Austria, all right, is going to declare war on Serbia, all right? So maybe that's not the best way of doing that. Boop. So the yellow countries are at war with the red countries. We're going to do that, all right? So boop. So you got Austria now declares war on Serbia. That's not really surprising, all right? Because Austria is mad, they're going to declare war. That's nothing weird. Here's where World War I starts getting crazy, because you're like, I've never even really heard of Austria, Hungary, or Serbia. Here's where it gets crazy. When Austria declares war on Serbia, they are unaware that Serbia has a secret alliance with Russia. That's right. Russia turns around, boop, 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 all right, and declares war, boop, 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 declares war on Austria-Hungary. All right. Oh, no. Well, they don't realize that Austria-Hungary has an alliance with boop, 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 Germany. So now Germany and Austria-Hungary declare war on Russia. Now, as we start getting ahead, keep in mind, these third world countries of like Bosnia and Serbia don't matter. We're never going to talk about them again. So now it's Germany versus, I don't know why that's doing that. Germany versus Austria-Hungary. All right. So it's Germany and Austria-Hungary versus Russia. Well, when Russia declares war on Germany, or Germany declares war on Russia, they are unaware that Germany has an alliance with France. All right. So you have, let me color some of this in. You got Russia. This is a yellow country here. All right. And you got France here. They're on the same team versus Germany and Austria-Hungary. All right. So it's 2-on-2. Russia and France versus Germany and Austria-Hungary. So the next question here is, let's back away from that for a second. Don't do that. Boop. All right. I'm getting used to this thing here. All right. So the question is, why does Russia get involved? Because Russia had a secret alliance with Serbia. So since Russia had a secret alliance with Serbia, they declared war on Austria, which will then bring Germany into the war, which will then bring France into the war. Again, this is dumb. All right. So let me outline this once again. All right. So here's the countries. So I'll just make one line here. So Germany and Austria-Hungary. All right. This is Germany and Austria-Hungary here. They're like one united group here. They are fighting against Russia. Let me make that line here so it doesn't bleed together there. Russia. Russia's big, really big. All right. Russia and France. Now, Russia is a big Mac Daddy one, and Russia and Germany hate each other. Germany can't wait to go attack Russia. However, they realize that Russia is a very substantial opponent. France has never won a war in the history of their country. So, hey, how about we do this? And it's called the Schlieffen Plan. Germany is going to focus on France first. All right. When they focus on France first, they're going to take out France, then use all their forces against Russia. That is their plan. Now, France here, if you look over here at France, France tries to barricade themselves in right here where this yellow is, trying to barricade themselves in because that's the entrance into France from Germany. Germany's like, yeah, I'm not an idiot. I'm not going to go right through your well-defended area. So Germany is going to cut through this country called Belgium. So Germany's going to go here through Belgium, all right, and cut into France like that. So when they cut through Belgium, again, it gets dumb. And all this happens in like 2 days. When Germany cuts through Belgium, All right. What happens is Belgium is a neutral country. So Belgium doesn't have an army, but they have a secret alliance with England. And England now, let me outline them in yellow. England now declares war on Germany and Austria-Hungary, coming to the defense of Belgium. So now it's 3-on-2. England, France, Russia. All right. Does that make sense? So it's dumb. It's dumb. It's 3-on-2. Italy. What? Exactly. Yeah, like what does Italy have to do with anything? So Italy here, Italy knows, and let me outline Italy, because they're going to join the side of Germany. Italy realizes whoever wins this gets all the cool stuff from whoever loses. So Italy thinks there's no way anybody can beat Germany's army. So Italy joins the side of Austria-Hungary and Germany versus England, France, and Russia. So it's 3-on-3. Russia, England, France, those yellow countries, versus the red countries, which are Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. Again, this is dumb, but this is exactly what happens. Let me see. Boop, boop, boop. So what was Italy's reasoning for getting into the war? Italy just hopped into this war. They hadn't been wronged in any way. They hopped in this war because they want all the stuff from whoever loses. They think there's no way Germany can be beat because Germany has a legit army. All right. So they think that Germany is going to win. It's kind of weird because Italy switches sides halfway through the war, but we'll talk about that when we get there. So there's two team names here. All right. Let me outline them here one more time and show you. Boop, 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 boop. So you got Italy, Germany, and Austria-Hungary. All right. They are called the Central Powers because you got to come up with Central Powers. And then you got Russia here. You got France here. And you got England here, and I'll write it up here next to England where it's the Allies. All right. So it's the Allies versus the Central Powers. That is their team names on that. So the question is, are there good guys and bad guys here? The answer is no. It's everybody's just being wrong, like collectively, like there's no smart stuff to do here. So, boop, boop, boop. So who's on whose side? All right. Allies, Britain, France, and Russia, and eventually America. America does eventually get into this. But again, right now, America is completely going to stay out of this. And we'll talk about that more tomorrow. France is led by a guy named George Clemenceau. Britain is led by a dude named David Lloyd George. Russia is led by a guy named the Tsar Nicholas II. He's like a dictator, and we're going to mention more about him. The Central Powers, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. Italy's going to eventually switch sides. It's kind of a complicated story. I'll simplify it for you. But Italy starts out in the Central Powers. Germany was led by Kaiser Wilhelm. And Italy is led by Vittorio Orlando. Don't worry about Austria-Hungary here. Japan and the Ottoman Empire. All right. So the Ottoman Empire is basically the Middle East. Japan and the Ottoman Empire are going to join the side of the Allies. Japan joins the Allies. The Ottoman Empire joins the Central Powers. We don't talk about them very much in World War I. And the reason that is because they don't send a bunch of troops. They send money and things like that. But they don't actually send a bunch of troops. So a lot of people from their countries don't die. So we don't talk about them as much. But Japan does send a lot of money to the Allies. And the Ottoman Empire sends a bunch of money and supplies to the Central Powers. But we won't talk about them nearly as much in World War I, just purely because they didn't have as many men committed to the cause as the other countries did. Alrighty. And that is as far as we're going to get today. So do the